to China through SGlasses. I'm Wu Fan.
And I'm Jingnan.
And today we'll be talking about donghua, also known as Chinese animations, which are heavily embedded in our core childhood memories.
So before we begin, a clear distinction between anime and donghua. I think a lot of you are familiar with anime, which is Japanese animation, but that is very different from donghua, which is Chinese animation.
Yeah, and on the same note, there's also a difference between manhua and manga. So they respectively map onto Chinese, Korean, and Japanese like comics, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So moving on to a disclaimer before we start the episode proper. When doing research for this episode, we realized that there's not a lot of academic source material because there's not a lot of English materials that are studying Chinese animations. In fact, there's only like a few papers that had been written. So this episode will mostly be drawing from our personal experiences instead of these academic studies.
Okay, so we will start off with talking about our animation journey. So do you want to start off?
So I'm a very big fan of animated works. I watched a fair bit, so some of the ones that I've watched include Disney works, Pixar, Ghibli, and some anime, and also a lot of donghua.
Yeah, and for me, my childhood was very East Asian centered. So I watched a lot of Chinese cartoons, Chinese donghua, a lot of Studio Ghibli, and also this one particular Japanese anime that on hindsight is so terrifying to watch as a child is Kishin Dojin Zenki, and it actually features like really terrifying Japanese ghosts and spirits. Yeah, I don't know why my dad pushed it to me, but I feel like a lot of the anime we watched when we were kids were Chinese dubbed.
Imported from Japan but Chinese dubbed. So for me, I watched Digimon but in Chinese. So it was 数码宝贝.
Oh yeah.
And I also watched Card Captor Sakura or 魔卡少女.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then for me, I didn't watch any Disney. In fact, my first film was in secondary school, Princess and the Frog.
I have absolutely no comments on it, but she didn't even really watch Pixar. Like, oh my god, the atrocity. I'm kidding. Yeah, also like I think we both watched 中华小当家, which is a very funny name because 中华小当家 literally means like Chinese chef, like Chinese chef. But the thing is, it's a Japanese anime, and we watched it in Chinese dub. So like, I was convinced that it was a Chinese.
Yeah, I also thought it was. Also, like the person is wearing like very Chinese.
Yeah, the whole thing, like the main character is ethnically Chinese, like cooking Chinese food. But it's a Japanese anime, and we watched it.
Mandela effect. I'm like, okay, what? Okay. So now we're gonna talk about Chinese animations or donghua proper. And before we delve into the entire history, we have to mention this person who's basically the father of animation in China, who's called Wan Laiming, and the respectful honorary term for him is 大万老. So 大老 literally means like the person who's like has a high level of
big
mastery.
Bro, like,
like the godfather,
the
godfather of animation. Yeah, so the cool thing about him was he wasn't just a one-man team. He actually was born to a family of 4 brothers, so they're called the 4-1 brothers. Yeah, and then in the 1920s, which is like more than 100 years ago, they thrifted this filmmaking kind of machine that was like very what's the word for it? Like very basic, very rudimentary in the past, and they created the first ever donghua advertisement. Yeah, it was, I think it's about like a shoemaking or something like that. But yeah, so back then a lot of the arts they used wasn't like digital, of course. So we'll talk about that later on. So yeah, I think like Wan Laiming had a very big dream for Chinese donghua, and one of the quotes from him was 中国的动画片从一开始就不仅是供人玩赏和娱乐的消遣品，而是和现实紧密配合，走与欧美动画电影不同的道路. So he had a very big dream. He is like, you know, like a Mr. Worldwide global mindset. He knew that Chinese animations should have their own path, should have their own aesthetics, and should tell stories that reflect reality to all kinds of audiences, and it shouldn't just be for entertainment's sake. Yeah, and I think that's very important. That's something we want to talk about today also.
Yeah, so now that we understand like the founding fathers of Chinese animation, we need to talk about the style of Chinese animation and kind of the content. So Chinese animations were essentially an extension of other facets of Chinese arts and culture. A lot of the times the content of the storytelling in Chinese animation drew from ancient folklore or other types of Chinese literature. And a significant number of classical Chinese animation films were inspired and prototyped by ancient Chinese literature. So on top of that, there's also a lot of use of ancient Chinese arts and art forms and medium in Chinese animation. So there's a lot of like shadow puppetry, paper folded stop motion, ink wash painting, and brightly colored pomp and panache of like Chinese opera. So there's a lot of these kind of traditional art forms influence on Chinese animation that makes the visuals very distinct from anime as well as like American animated works.
I think the caveat here is like the earlier years. Like nowadays it's like
slightly different,
more,
but I think it's like you have to understand the origins and the like stylistic choices that they decided from very early on, which is if we were going to make animations in China, we wanted it to be distinctly Chinese and we wanted it to be very reflective of our traditional arts and culture. And that is a mindset that, although might have shifted a little bit, still stays true to the core of a lot of Chinese animated works these days.
Yeah, I think one specific art style, the 水墨动画, Chinese ink wash painting, I think that was probably one of the most labor intensive ones, because you know watercolor, you have to, if you want to add on intensity, you must paint over it again. Then you must wait for the paint to dry, which is like really painful as compared to like using pencil to draw every frame. Of course that one is very labor intensive also, but this one even more. So yeah, so I think one of the films we want to talk about is 小蝌蚪找妈妈, which is one of the, I think, iconic defining moments in Chinese donghua history.
The English name is Where is Mama?
Yeah.
So it's the story about a tadpole looking for its mom. But the thing is, the entire film was done in Chinese ink wash painting style, which is incredible because it is a very different form. If you've seen like Chinese ink wash paintings, it's a very different art form than, let's say, like normal animation or like Western paintings like oil paintings or acrylic, because it's translucent and a lot of it is about the vibe that it evokes.
It's about the 意象.
Yeah, instead of like actual realism or the details, right?
So when it comes to like shading or like 透视, what's 透视? Like the different angles.
Transparency, translucency.
Yeah, this kind of stuff. It doesn't reflect reality exactly, but the energy, the vibe.
It's very abstract.
Yeah,
what I'm trying to say.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's creating a mood that you're trying to emulate instead of like looking at something that is very clearly, oh, that's an apple or that's something like. The strokes are very minimalistic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative space and like 留白.
Yeah, the usage is really good because I think there were some characters in the cartoon. I mean, it's not just about the tadpole, which is black lah. So it's like, you know, there's also, I think there was a crane, there was like some fish. So like the white, the white parts of the fish and the crane, they just leave it blank, but it fills the space very beautifully. And I think why this film was so important was I feel like it connected a lot of different aspects of a lot of different people in the arts world. So like for example, this entire film itself was inspired by Qi Baishi, who's a very famous Chinese calligraphic painter who famously drew prawn. So aquatic animals lah, huh? Yeah, and then after that, after this film came out, this very famous Chinese literary writer called Mao Dun, you know, Mao Dun Wenxue is named after him. It's like Nobel Peace Prize, that kind of energy. I mean, like the name after him. So yeah, so he wrote an entire long poem about this specific film. Yeah, to like praise it for advancing arts in China.
Yeah, and on top of like the stylistic choices, we also mentioned just now that a lot of the content was inspired by ancient Chinese literature. So one very good example of a traditional Chinese animation would be Monkey King, where there's an entire film dedicated to Monkey King called Havoc in Heaven.
大闹天宫.
Yes.
That was in 1964.
Yeah, so a lot of these are like, okay, the golden age Chinese animation was from late 1950s to early 1960s. And then the newer stuff is like a lot later than that. We will get to that later. But yeah, so like a lot of the characters from these animated films are like traditional characters that you would see in traditional Chinese literature. So kind of like how a lot of Disney films are drawing from
Brothers Grimm.
Like Andersen's tales, like Little Mermaid. These are all tales that we were told growing up, for them at least. So for Chinese animations, a lot of the movies were based on stories that young people are very familiar with growing up as well.
Yeah. So like 大闹天宫 is based on one of the 4 great literary works, which is 西游记.
Yeah, The Journey to the West. Yes.
Yeah.
So talking about the timeline of things, so 1920s was the actual start of the animation journey in China, but a lot of the works were lost between 1920s and 1950 because of World War II. But like we mentioned, the golden age really started in late 1950s to early 1960s. So that was when 大闹天宫 was and 小蝌蚪找妈妈 were made. So these two were like very iconic films, and that really left a very big impression on people that even to this day, like we are so young,
and we know about it.
The film came out in 1960s and
when our parents were born.
and we still talk about it today. So it's really like the defining golden era of Chinese animations. But then, as we all know, 1966 was the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and then from 1966 to 1976, it was a total decade of pretty much cultural devastation. So a lot of animation works were essentially wiped out. So we have to talk about this one particular studio when talking about Chinese animation history, which is Shanghai 美术电影制片厂, which is very long, so we will be calling it Shanghai 美影厂. Essentially, it's like Shanghai Animation Studios. So it started in around the 1940s, so it's not like 1920s early, but it is so pivotal to the entire history of Chinese animation. It is like the one and the only like giant. Its presence in Chinese animation is kind of like Ghibli's presence in Japanese anime, because in the West you still have like a few different, like DreamWorks, Pixar, Disney, a couple that are competing, but in China this is really like the one and the true one that you're talking about, that everyone is familiar with.
So for some titles like 大闹天宫, the one I mentioned just now, 哪吒闹海, 阿凡提, and 黑猫警长, which is also a core memory for a lot of people. These are all from Shanghai 美影厂.
So then from 1970s onwards to 80s and 90s, there wasn't a lot of very, very good like animated works. Some call it the silver age. Like there were peaks here and there, but not a lot. And then by the 2000s, it really kind of fell apart because China became a source of cheap animation labor. Because as we all know, animation actually takes a lot of time and effort, especially when you're doing like hand-drawn animation. So what people tend to do in overseas animation studios is that they will draw keyframes, and then the filler frames in. So keyframes will be like the key snapshots for each scene. So maybe one scene there'll be a couple keyframes.
Like running, maybe it's just So
like the most important frame they will draw in their own country, and then like the filler frames in between where it's just like movement or like scenery background, they will outsource this kind of work to Chinese animators. So it got to the point where the Chinese animated artists were prioritizing outsourced work for Japanese studios over working with local studios, because there just weren't a lot of good works being produced. So a lot of backdrops seen in anime in the 2000s were actually drawn in China.
So just now we mentioned, when we think about animations, you don't really think about Chinese donghua first, and within the East Asian sphere, anime is more well known, right? But actually the ink wash painting style in particular was a huge inspiration for a lot of Japanese animators back then. So just now we mentioned Wan Laiming, right, which is the founding father of Chinese animation. So basically he created a few works that inspired Japanese animators later on within the time frame. So I remember during World War II, he created 铁扇公主, which is a story from 西游记, Journey to the West. And within the film itself, he analogized the villain as a World War II Japanese side of things, like invaders. And he actually was spreading an anti-war message. And because of the kind of like aesthetic he had and the kind of storytelling method he had, actually the writer for like Osamu Tezuka wrote the Astro Boy, 铁臂阿童木. He also added anti-war like messages into his drawing from the other side, which is like technically you would think of these two countries as like opposing forces, right? But within the animation world, they were really like, trying to seek peace with each other.
I think you can be anti-war on both sides.
It's like, so like, in one small corner of the world in this industry, there are actually people who are trying their best to spread positive messages. And back then, Chinese animation already had that influence. And another example is Takahata Isao, who is also a very famous Japanese animator back then. He actually wrote Kaguya Hime Monogatari, I think, when he was inspired by Wan Laiming. So there was actually a lot of cultural influence going back and forth back then.
So we will now go through some of like the older animated works. So animated works includes both TV series as well as movies. Starting with TV series, I guess like one of the most iconic old TV animated shows was 黑猫警长 or Black Cat Detective. It started around the 1980s. And the only thing I know about this show, other than the fact that it's extremely famous and popular, is the song goes 黑猫警长 la 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 黑猫警长.
Okay, the premise is that this black cat is a police officer and he's trying to catch two rats who are thieves and burglars or something like that. And then he has a co-worker, a white cat that he kind of low-key has a crush on. Yeah, and then I remember the rats can like fly airplanes and tanks.
I don't know what's going on. The 1980s be wild.
Okay, I think it's so influential that it appeared on Chunwan as like the Spring Festival Gala as like the child version of like the show.
Yeah, like there were references made to this show because it's so popular. And my mom remembers the show. I don't know if she watched it, but she knows it exists. Like it's very, very popular. And then the early 2000s there was this Hong Kong animated works based off I think drawings like a comic series called 麦兜故事 or My Life as McDowell, which I did not watch.
Okay, I did watch it, and I think it was because when I was P5 or P6, my teacher was Taiwanese. So you know, Taiwan and Hong Kong have like a lot of animation related collaboration. So he was really obsessed with Maido. So the story of Maido is Maido is a pig, and his mom is also a pig.
Quite stupid.
Yeah,
like the premise is that he's a stupid pig.
Yeah, and then his mom is a very like loving, but also an auntie person with like curly hair, that kind of. But she's like a tough love kind of mom. Yeah, but she has a lot of like small little life wisdoms. Yeah, and like the story is like, you know, sometimes because they're going through like poverty and like a single parent family, so they actually have a lot of real world issues. But because the art style is so cute, it's like fluffy, cute. So like a lot of problems that the Maido is going through is like romanticized as like some colorful art. So it's like sad but cute at the same time.
The only thing I know about Maido is I watched this one clip where he's like ordering food at a cafe, at like a Hong Kong style cafe, and then he's like, oh, I want like fishball noodles, and then the guy is like, there's no fishball, and he's like, okay, I want fishball soup, and he's like, so like he kept. So the waiter was telling him they ran out of a certain list of ingredients, but he kept asking for like different iterations of the same thing.
Oh no!
It was so funny because
it was stupid.
Yeah, it was this bite. It was a very stupid like the.
No, I remember there was one time he was really hungry. He wanted to eat bao, and then he wanted to have more bao, but there wasn't any. So he started to sing 大包多来两里没关系.
It's so dumb. Okay, but I think it's like meant for a younger target audience.
Yeah,
I think.
But I mean the story is very sad technically. So yeah, but there's a Maido statue in Hong Kong actually.
Yeah, I think it's very, very famous in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Another talking about like works for younger audiences. Another very famous work from Chinese animation is 喜羊羊与灰太狼 or The Pleasant Goat and the Big Wolf that started in around like the mid of the early 2000s. So I didn't watch a lot of this growing up. I watched a couple episodes. I think this is really targeted towards toddlers. And by the time it came out, I was like already going to primary school. But I
still can't watch.
I don't know why. I know the opening theme song by heart.
Okay, go 进来。
喜羊羊、美羊羊、懒羊羊、沸羊羊、软羊羊、软绵绵、红太狼、灰太狼。Okay, I'm gonna stop here. But I know the entire song by heart. I don't know. It's a very cute opening song, but I don't understand why I know it by heart. But okay, but the premise is incredibly popular. Think like Chinese Peppa Pig, like that's how popular it is. So the premise is there's a family of goats, and each goat has like
there's a village.
It's a village of goats, and each goat is named after their characteristics. So 喜羊羊 is like the pleasant goat, and then there's like 美羊羊 like the pretty one and the slow one, and
then the 懒羊羊 is the one with the shit on the head.
Is like lazy, but anyway, and then there's like two wolves who constantly try and eat the
shit. And 灰太狼.
Yeah, and then they like constantly fail. Yeah. So it's kind of like Tom and Jerry vibes. I don't know, like. But
they're very inventive. The 灰太狼 in particular, he created a lot of like scientific like tools to try to get in.
It's So like I don't know, it's just very funny, but it's very much catered towards very young audiences.
I would say that like it created such a mega franchise that it was the first 贺岁动画片.
Oh yeah.
So 贺岁片is if you listen to our previous episodes, we mentioned that Chinese New Year has like blockbuster Chinese New Year movies called 贺岁片. So 喜羊羊与灰太狼 was the first cartoon franchise that created a 贺岁片. And I remember right, it was related to the year of the ox. So it was like something 牛气冲天. But the plot twist is the 牛, which is supposed to be the cow in this show, is actually 蜗牛, which is snail.
It's quite funny.
Yeah. So the whole premise was like some snails, they got some viral infection. Yeah. And then the Hong Tai Lang, Hui Tai Lang, the wolf gang and the sheep gang, right? They had to team up to save the world together. Oh, also by then, right? Okay, I know this because it's like a core childhood memory. By then, right, the Hui Tai Lang and Hong Tai Lang actually had a kid called Xiao
Oh my
Hui
god,
Hui.
the law is so
The law is so deep. And then Xiao Hui Hui is like super cute. And so it's like, you know when you are like a freshborn animal, you don't really have like the I want to kill everybody else kind of instincts, right? So the Xiao Hui Hui didn't know that he's supposed to eat sheep. So he was like making friends with the sheep, and the sheep were helping to take care of him, And that was like the first time they ever collaborated. And then ever since then, there was like a 贺岁片 for every zodiac animal. And it was always different. Like they go to outer space and all that. It's like,
wow.
It's like multiple alternate universes.
Cinematic universe.
Cinematic universe of Xiayang Hui Tai Lang.
Yeah. So it's so influential to the point that I remember reading a headline that so if you watch the original series, in the show, the wife of the wife wolf, Hong Tai Lang, like the lady wolf, loves to beat the husband wolf with a pot, like a pan, frying pan, like a wok.
Yeah.
So basically the joke is that he's supposed to go and get the goat for them to eat, right? But he always fails at his job because that's how you make sure the plot continues. And then every time she will chastise him for being so useless by hitting him on the head with a wok. And then it got to the point where there was a parent in China who went to the courts and said that and sued the company, like the animation studio, because they're like, this is influencing my child in a negative way. This is very dangerous. What if my child thinks that it's safe to hit people on the head with a wok? And then the Chinese courts was like, you know what, you're right. And then they ruled in the parents' favor and said that you can't exhibit dangerous behavior anymore.
Oh my
and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Why are you expecting animation studios to parent your child?
No, anyway, and the thing is, she hits him so hard he flies out the window. And
none of this anyway.
Oh my god, he's like, 我还会回来的.
No, I think that's Pokemon.
No, he also said that. So maybe he copied Pokemon.
I don't know. Anyway,
maybe Hui Tai Lang watched Pokemon, then he was inspired. Yeah. Okay, so another animal related one is 熊出没. So it's about two bears and a dogger, and this show is very based in Dongbei humor. So Dongbei is one of the coldest provinces in China, and it's also well known for having a certain dialect that's very funny to listen to. And a lot of comedians in China or talk show hosts come from Dongbei because they're just naturally very funny. Yeah. So this entire show, right, the 熊大 and 熊二 speak in the Dongbei accent. So imagine two already very round brown blobs. And then they're just fighting another guy who's is very caricature style, so he looks very ugly lah. And they're just three stupid characters trying to one side trying to protect the forest and the other one trying to lock the trees. Yeah, but over time, right, the environmentalist message got so strong that the logger became a forest ranger and he started becoming a tour guide to teach people about environmental protection. And that is how a lot of childhood shows we watch now have become a everybody happy one big family kind of plotline. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know much about 熊出没.
熊出没 is so funny.
It started in 2012. It started in 2012, so it's still going on, I think.
Yeah.
I think some of these franchises are still ongoing.
Yeah.
What about 西游记?
Oh, 西游记. Okay, 西游记 was 19... Okay, do you watch it? That was one of my core memories, 1999. I remember I was... Okay, back then did your parents buy you CDs? I had boxes of CDs. Yeah.
Is this Oh, I remember this.
No, the song, the theme song, 猴哥你真了不得.
Yeah.
So I remember this version of 西游记, right? The Sun Wukong looked very young. He looked very effeminate somehow. His face very young.
西游记 is Journey to the West.
Yeah, by the way. So just now we mentioned 大闹天宫, that's one version of 西游记. Then there's also
So
basically, which is
Journey to the West is this epic literature novel that is extremely long and it encompasses a lot of characters and a lot of small stories. Yeah. It's kind of like the Odyssey or Greek mythology in general, where it's very long and there's a lot of different characters with a lot of different subplot lines and stuff like that. So you can easily just focus on one character and one story and write or create an entire work out of it. So Havoc in Heaven was the subplot of one of the characters, and then this show is a summary of the entire Journey to the West.
I think actually someone was commenting that 西游记, this Chinese literary work, really connected the past and the present of Chinese donghua animation. Because 1964 was 大闹天宫, which actually there's a lot of very cool stuff about it we can unpack. And then 1999 was 西游记, and then there was 2015 or 2019 or something.
2019
大圣归来.
No, 2015 was 大圣归来.
2015 was 大圣归来. And the thing is, right, the one of the producers who worked on the 1999 show, he's the current director of 大圣归来.
Yeah.
So he's been working on the same monkey
for about 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then the next show that we can talk about is 哪吒传奇. Okay, I think the thing is like there are a lot of different literature works that Chinese animators can draw inspiration from, but there are a few characters that are just so popular that they get a lot of different reboots and remakes. One of them is 哪吒. So like,
by the way, Naja appears in COG also.
Yeah, 哪吒is a character in like Journey to the West.
But his parents changed.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Okay,
sorry.
So 哪吒传奇, there was actually a movie called 哪吒闹海 in 1979, which came out almost like it was like the first animated film to come out after the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and it was like the peak of the silver age of Chinese animated movies. But there was also a TV series called 哪吒传奇 in 2003.
Yeah.
And again, it was like a very defining moment for a lot of people's childhood who watched the show. They're like, I remember 哪吒as that particular image.
Yeah. No, okay. One thing I thought was very cool about 哪吒传奇 was it actually combined 封神榜 and 山海经, which are also, these are two more like mythical folklore centered Chinese literary works, and they were 封神榜 in particular was set in the Shang dynasty between Zhou and Shang when they were fighting. So back then the theory was that the emperor was, you know, being led astray by this 狐狸精, some like fox spirit, 妲己. Yeah, and then there was also like 杨戬 二郎神,
it's very
托塔天王.
Yeah. It's very familiar if you know Chinese folklore or
yeah. And the thing is, I think 哪吒传奇 the 2003 version had a 小龙女 who is like 哪吒's like kind of love interest.
And
I remember back then I thought she was very pretty, but now I look back I'm like, because her eyes are like that. It's like the most stereotypical Asian eyes, but it's like tilted. Like I'm looking at her, I'm like, I don't know, it's like 童年滤镜 or something, but I don't get it. So another one of the Chinese donghua that was heavily inspired by traditional Chinese literature is 中华小子, and it's a very martial arts based animation. It came out in 2005, but honestly I look back now and I still think that the animation quality was super high. Like it low-key already had the Japanese anime aesthetic where like the movements are very fluid and stylized, and because there were multiple fight scenes. Yeah, so this show was based on the concept of not really concept, a real geographical place called Shaolin Si, which is where a lot of martial artists train, and they
are also Buddhist monks.
Yeah, but Shaolin Si still exists till today, so it has a very long history, and it always appears in like, you know, Jingyong Wuxia as one of like the strongholds of martial arts. Yeah, so this was my first wuxia donghua, and I remember like always made me feel like I had qinggong because the art was so good. I always feel like, what, you know, every time.
Qinggong, for context, is a type of martial art where you literally can like jump really high and like travel,
float around the rooftops. It's like parkour, except you don't like actually.
It's like parkour but you fly.
Parkour but your body is straight the whole time, and you're like, you look super good.
It's fake, by the way. It's not real. You can't fly.
Yeah, and what I really like about it was like they. You know, just now I mentioned how like 小龙女's eyes are like that, right? Yeah, in this show, right, it has very like Chinese characteristics, like the very typical 丹凤眼, which is like one of the
eye shapes.
One of the prettiest known eye shapes.
In ancient China, a lot of people idolize the 丹凤眼 eye shape, which is basically a kind of eye
it's
shape
like narrow-ish and
where
long
you have
tapered.
monolids, and then your the back of your eye actually like tilts upwards and is slanted. So that was the kind of standard of beauty, and that's what you see in a lot of traditional Chinese paintings.
Yeah. And so in this donghua, they actually drew characters who are like that, and also the main character is a girl who's a girl boss. So I really like how like she was like, back then in 2005 it was quite atypical lah. So she really like just kicked the guys when she was like, when they were being like illogical and like not moving the plotline forward. Yeah, so I really like her. So 中华小子, and they actually mentioned, they actually talk about like real world issues like class differences, gender expectations, and that was back in, I think it was the Tang Dynasty or something like that. Yeah, and then they even had like time travel elements. And this show was actually so famous that it went for award shows in US and Japan. Yeah, but I feel like nobody really hears
I have
about
never
it.
heard about it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, my other Chinese Singaporean friends also don't know about it, so it might just be my own childhood memory. Okay, so on the point of wuxia, because I think my wuxia journey started when I was a kid. Yeah, so there was also 红猫蓝兔七侠传. This is a humongous franchise, and just like 喜羊羊与灰太狼, right, it's also about anthropomorphized animals, and they also have like multiple generations of characters. So 红猫蓝兔七侠传 is actually about 7 different kinds of animals, and they all wield a particular kind of sword. And then when the 7 swords come together, like 七剑合并, then do some cool whirlwind stuff in the sky with like different colors and stuff. Yeah, then they can fight evil. Basically, it's like, okay, it sounds so stupid, right? But the animation was like, okay, in this case, this one also had a lot of martial arts fighting. But you know the animals, right? They were like very short and small. So like when they fight, it's really like, it's very bouncing kind of effect. But like, looking back, right, it was actually quite a dark story, because one of the villains, right, I remember she poisoned one of the good characters, pretended to be her, and then she made the good character unable to prove her innocence. And there were like a lot of like other like really heavy, I guess, topics like being misunderstood and literally having to shed blood to prove your innocence, or like inheriting an entire legacy of your late father and trying to find your true worth. And like one of the characters literally was already a father, and then he had to decide between his responsibility of, you know, going to war and maybe dying versus like taking care of his wife and his children.
This sounds very dark for a show with like Reddits.
No, but the animation style, everything very cute, and like, yeah, but like the characters
Can you imagine a rabbit like, I'm going to war?
No, I mean, it's like the characters actually like will go through a lot of heartbreak, and they actually were crying. Like, this was very raw for like a childhood show. Yeah, but it's one of my favorite animations. Yeah.
It's very funny, a rabbit like, I'm waiting for my husband to return from war.
No, here's the thing. I remember, do you know how much this show influenced me? Last time in P5, right? For English lesson, we learned about Charlotte's Web. Do you know about that? Yeah, so Charlotte's Web is a story about friendship. A lot of it was about friendship between the pig and the spider. Yeah, so I remember our classroom activity was, there was a mind map on friendship, and we had to branch out from there and write a lot of stuff. And then like to define what friendship is.
Did you write about this?
No, you know what my definition was? Is to stand by your friends at the cost of your life.
I think your teacher was called and was like, does this kid need counseling?
My teacher was so concerned, she talked to me about it, because otherwise I wouldn't remember writing this, right? Oh my god, then in my head I was just thinking about how like Lan Tu decided to like die for Hong Mao. So yeah, this was a very important part of my childhood.
It's a core memory. Defining characteristic of who she is now and who she thinks she will be in the rest of her life.
But yeah, till this day I still can't, you know, just kick the floor and fly. So so I don't think it's happening. Okay, moving on to 小鲤鱼历险记. I realized that a lot of the childhood stuff that I really enjoy watching are all related to animals.
She's a furry.
Okay, 小鲤鱼历险记, right, actually is inspired by this Chinese myth called 鲤鱼跳龙门. So there's this myth that if a cup jumps over the dragon gate, it will turn into a dragon itself also.
Yeah. It's kind of like an analogy for working hard and
going
like,
through hardships.
Going through hardships and like being aspirational and ambitious in your life and, you know, that kind of stuff.
So like the 小鲤鱼历险记, right, it's also, why does it also feature sad kids crying? Okay, so it's an aquatic version. So like the main characters are this carp, this jellyfish. Okay, I cannot.
Jellyfish!
Yeah, there was a carp, a jellyfish, a turtle, and a seahorse. And they all have very distinct characteristics. Yeah, and the bad people were this super fat 鲶鱼, catfish, and a 龙虾,
lobster,
and a snake who wants to be a dragon. That's the catch. Yeah, so the snake wants to be a dragon, and then in this world there are like 5 dragon skills that represent like bravery, wisdom, these kind of things. Yeah, and then basically there were some references to also like Phoenix and Rebirth, and it was a very long and heavy-hearted but very funny series, because the villains are all very stupid. But
what did you watch? I'm so confused. Like, I've never watched any of these shows that she's talking about, and just listening to the premise, I'm so confused.
I just want to say that my dad watched with me, and then like he called his bolster 肥鲶鱼, because it's like the fat catfish.
Dear God.
And then Sorry. The turtle was a glutton, and at one point he thought that he was the only person left within the friend group. So he wanted to just like kill himself. So he freaking just whammed his head into a rock. But because he has a very hard shell and he just like naturally stuck his head back in, he couldn't die. So he was like, okay, since I can't die, I'm just gonna eat myself to death. So
this is such a dark show.
You know, some things you only look back and realize what the hell was I
Yeah,
watching?
what the hell?
Back then I was so engrossed in the storyline. I was just like rooting for them.
How the hell
like,
is
proud
this?
friendship.
Okay.
Okay, the last one is 三国演义, and this was actually an official China-Japan animation collaboration. So there was one director from China, one director from Japan, and wow, the art style was super sick. Like, well, I think you can Google the
三国演义 is Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
Yeah.
It is one of the
Part
four
of the
classic literature novels in ancient China.
Yeah. And I thought it was very impressive because, I mean, this donghua was very impressive because, you know, 三国演义 is like 99% men with the same kinds of beards fighting war. How do you make all the characters look different?
That's very true. There are over 100 characters.
Yeah. And I think this was a very grown up kind of presentation style. So every time a character appears, right, you know, in ancient China, the names are like, there's Ming, Zi. Ming and Zi both means name nowadays, but back then Ming and Zi were different things to represent a person's title, and there's also Hao. So like when a character appears, it will appear like his 名字 and Hao will appear on the side of his face, like you're watching a historical documentary.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was super impressive, and yeah, I think these were the key donghua that I watched.
Yeah, as you can tell, I didn't really watch any of this. Yeah, I watched like Digimon.
That's very deep also. It's about like animal abuse.
No, that's not what Digimon is about.
I don't know.
So now that we discussed some of the older TV shows and series for donghua, we can now move on to older donghua movies. So the first one that we definitely have to talk about, and we already mentioned, is Havoc in Heaven, that came out in 1964. So this is very famous for a few reasons, but one of the reasons is that it's incredibly stylized and dramatized in terms of its art style, and aesthetic, and it's very bright in colors, very colorful, as well as the character design is full of curves. And if you look at the faces as well as the proportions of the characters, it's not realistic at all. Instead, it actually resembles kind of like Peking opera, Peking opera faces paintings. Yeah. So on top of that, it is a very familiar tale to a lot of people in China. But they kind of presented it in a very interesting way with a lot of, and even the music that was used in the movie is very much like traditional Chinese.
Yeah, all the fight scenes suddenly you hear like, I don't want to say
like
dong
a
dong
dong
xiang, but
it's dong dong xiang. And like
it's not racist if we say it.
So it's really dong dong xiang, and
It's like pop, 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 pop,
and
pop,
it's very reminiscent of like Chinese opera if you've heard it before. And the story is very much like one against like a story about someone fighting against like the system and stuff like that.
It starts with Sun Wukong.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, so maybe the context of the show, would be Sun Wukong is this monkey born out of stone. Okay. Yeah, so like imagine this like from the eyes of the heavenly courts, is this like unruly, uncivilized, random ass organism that suddenly comes to us and wrecks shit up.
Okay, let's go back. Let's down all the way back.
Okay.
So the premise of the story is actually the Monkey King becoming Monkey King, but in Chinese folklore and mythology, there is this specific type of creature called Yao Guai or Yao Jing. So essentially, they are like
it's like monster, but
they are non-human beings that have
gained sentience,
sentience, and become and able to present themselves in human-like forms.
Yes.
So they can speak, they can walk and stuff like that. So it can be anything that you can think of that is like a living object that is not human. So it can be a tree, it can be a rat, it can be a butterfly. Any of these things, once they have lived long enough and gain sentience, they can become Yao Guai or Yao Jing.
Yes.
So one of these examples is Sun Wukong, who was born out of a rock, and then he is very, very powerful for whatever reason I don't remember.
He got plot armor. You literally got plot armor.
Yeah, and then he is very rebellious.
Yes.
So he's like, I don't like. So then there's the heavenly courts who rule above like all the
It's like this high and mighty atas people for no good reason.
Yeah, like they rule the gods and they rule all the like peasants and everything that is like
on
earth and all the realms.
They control weather, they control everything.
Yeah, so he's like, I don't like the heavenly courts. I think you guys, there's a lot of like other stories going on.
Yes,
but he's basically like fighting against authority and the system.
Yes.
You know, he's like anarchist kind of, and then he's like
anti-hero.
He's like, screw you guys, I'm going to declare myself king. And he's actually gave himself the title of 齐天大圣, which is like the king that is equivalent to the skies.
Can compete with the heavens.
Yeah, that can compete with the heavens, which is very, very like revolutionary if you think about it from the perspective that ancient China is very hierarchical. There is an emperor, and if you say anything bad about the emperor, you finna die. So
you must respect the mandate of heaven, and it just trickles down into also respecting your elders or like whoever just has slightly higher authority than you.
So it's like the story itself is very much fighting against that kind of system and hierarchy.
And the person behind this is also the godfather of Chinese animation, Wan Laiming, and he actually came up with a lot of fresh ways to characterize the characters, and like some of them became moral caricatures. So for example, Yu Huang Dadi, who is like the heavenly emperor who rules over everybody else, he was cast as a very arrogant person who, while trying to run away from the Monkey King, he even wanted to bring his stone along with him. Like it just shows how arrogant he is. And then I remember like the 土地佬, which is like the
earth god.
The earth god, I guess. So like so like Wan Laiming, right, when he created the earth god, he created a very cute character who always has to sneeze every time he appears because he's always underground, so it's so dark for him that he's sensitive to light. It's also because he's sensitive to light. So every time he comes out onto like above ground, right, he will sneeze. So he has a very big red nose. It's like these are some like of the very small details that, you know, like very 深入人心. Like until now you think about it, you're like, oh my god.
It humanizes and adds dimensions to the characters.
Yeah, for sure. And like once again, it demonstrates how he feels like cartoons should be a social commentary and shouldn't just be like for entertainment purposes. So I think this is definitely an iconic masterpiece.
Moving on to the 1979 film 哪吒闹海. So it's known as 哪吒Conquers the Dragon King. Again, like very much the folklore. If you're familiar with哪吒, he also appears in Journey to the West. And this is actually quite significant because during the Cultural Revolution, there were very few animated works, and those that were animated works were actually essentially propaganda for the Chinese Communist Party. So because of that, the animation style was very realistic, at least compared to the earlier works, so they were very heavily dramatized, and you know, the aesthetics was very stylized. So those works were very much like normal people drawn as like
very boring.
Quite boring. But the 1979 哪吒闹海was like a return back to the normal. It was more realistic than previous works, but it still had like the oversized proportions, the wondrous colors, as well as like the curvy, flowy character design, and of course like the familiar Peking opera ensemble. So these things were viewed as obsolete and out of touch during the Cultural Revolution. So the exaggerated movements, facial features and body proportions all reflect a combination of opera and ink paintings. So it is really like a back to norm as compared to the Cultural Revolution. That's why a lot of people consider it like the Silver Age, because it was not as
like Renaissance, is it?
Yeah, like it was not as amazing as Havoc in Heaven, but it was definitely very incredible. Another very important thing is 哪吒闹海 actually talks about a story of哪吒fighting against the patriarchy, because essentially哪吒is this like very哪吒is this kid who was born after being like the mom was pregnant for 3 years. Basically he's like 神童 lah, like he's like a god kid, like he's a child with superpowers, but he's born to a ordinary father who is the governor of a town, 钱塘关. So in this story, he kind of wreaks havoc, like哪吒as a child kind of wreaks havoc a little bit, but he was doing it to kind of vent his own sense of justice, because he was trying to like save his friends and stuff. But he offended some of like the heavenly gods, okay, specifically the Dragon King.
Who's in the ocean,
who's in the ocean, 东海龙王. Okay, so he offended the Dragon King by killing his son. Okay, that's
that's a whole ass story.
But the point is, he did like offend the Dragon King, and the Dragon King commanded the father of Ne Zha to say, your son killed my son, so it is your turn to punish him. If not, I will bring down like havoc upon your town.
I will drown
Qiantangguan and kill all your like citizens, including you. So the father, being a very unreasonable character, he did not listen to Ne Zha explain himself. He did not side with Ne Zha at all. Instead, he just sought to punish Ne Zha in order to please the Dragon King. And out of desperation and like frustration for this like being stuck in a tough situation, Ne Zha actually killed himself with a sword. And then Ne Zha was rebirthed from lotus roots. It's a whole thing. Okay, the point is Ne Zha is like a symbolism for fighting against the unreasonable patriarchy, which is a very common thing in ancient China.
Death.
Yeah, symbolic death. Because like, how many of us have unreasonable parents? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, and I'm very sure it's a lot worse in ancient China, where like 父母之命为寿之言, like you have to obey every single thing your parents or your elders say. So again, it's like a reflection similar to the Monkey King story. It's a reflection of like the rebellious sentiments of ancient Chinese citizens that is reflected in the literature that has now been translated into an animated work. Moving on to 天书奇谭.
Yeah, okay. So for 天书奇谭, it's actually yet another donghua with very Peking opera mask animation style, and it's actually based on a less known literary work called 平遥传. And when I was watching it in the past, right, I couldn't tell what the storyline was about, because it was basically, okay, the premise is one of the like heavenly generals or something, he stole a book from he stole a 天书, so like one of the books from like I guess you can call it like the heavenly library, and then he hid it in some cave. And then 3 狐狸精, so 3 like fox-turned spirits, they were trying to steal the book. So like the majority of the entire show was just the 3 fox spirits trying to travel to the place, then fighting around. And like, I think it wasn't very plot heavy. It was more about the aesthetics of the fights and how it lines up with the kind of music that's very like traditionally Chinese. And what was interesting was the 3 foxes actually played different roles within Peking opera. So there's like the 旦角, the 老生 and all that. Yeah. So they had mannerisms that really matched those kinds of characters in Peking opera, and they also spoke in that certain way, and the expressions really changed in that way also. So yeah, when I was watching it, I had no idea what the hell was happening the whole time. It was just the aesthetic, and I think this is the reason why I actually enjoyed watching Peking opera when I was a kid. I really like the aesthetic. But now, as someone who has no patience to wait for someone to, you know, like Peking opera, like they say for 30 seconds. Then move on to the next word, you know. Like I'm sorry for not appreciating it in its full glory, but now I really cannot spend 30 seconds waiting for the next word to come out.
Chinese opera is in a quiet place.
It is, but what the visuals.
It is a very like strong art form, and that deserves a lot of respect.
Yes,
but it is also in a quiet place.
But I would say the visual spectacle is next level. Like if you don't enjoy the sound of it, like watching all the like tricks and all the costumes is really like an experience.
I would have to say it's like sensory overload in one screen, because like there's so many colors and like so many things going on at the same time. But yeah, like Chinese opera is a whole other world that we might get into in the future, but not right now.
Okay, then now to one of Jingnan's favorite childhood memories. Okay.
Yeah, this is like a defined. You know how like she was defined by her rabbit and like
红猫蓝兔, don't call it rabbit. 红猫蓝兔七侠传.
That was her defining animated work, right?
Yes.
For me, the defining animated work that outlines my entire childhood and like shapes who I am to this day, it's called 宝莲灯 or Lotus Lantern. It came out in 1999. And like I just remember rewatching this multiple times as a kid and multiple times as an adult.
Aww.
And I just love it so much. Here's the thing, people said that I would consider it a commercial success kind of.
Okay.
But people don't tout it as like a cinematographic like wonder, you know. People are not like this is the best Chinese animated film ever.
Okay.
But to me, I think it's the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia mixed with
mixed
with a lot of other like sentiments that really make me very like enjoy this particular movie very, very much. But again, it's from it's about the story of I forgot the name. Lang Shen's like 妹妹.
So sister who is trapped in this place.
Yeah. Okay, so is this the age-old story of a fairy from the heavenly courts falling in love with a commoner man, and then they gave birth to a son together, and then the heavenly courts found out, and they were like, this relationship is unnatural, you two must be separated.
Why you downgrade yourself?
Yeah, all sorts of things. And then so they separated the two of them, and then the dad died, I think. And then the mom got trapped under a mountain.
三圣母.
三圣母, yes. And then the kid, I forgot the kid's name. But anyway, I can't remember people's names. Yeah. But the thing is, so the kid is like, I need to save my mother who is trapped under this mountain. I must be reunited with my mother. And then, so the mother, before they were separated, left him this lantern that resembles the shape of a lotus. And she's like, this is our family's weapon or something. It has like a lot of magical power that will protect you, and you know, it will save you in like dire situations. So he is like a child, you know, he's like 6 years old or something, and then he got separated from his mom, and then like he was on the run, and he was holding onto this like lotus lantern trying to make it work, even though it doesn't really make sense because he's like 6 years old, and
trying to work it.
Yeah, and then basically the movie journeys follows along as he journeys to save his mother, and he kind of try to become stronger and learn how to use the lotus lantern and try to overthrow the tyranny of his uncle who is 二郎神, and then finally manages to break his mom out of prison, like, and save her and be reunited with her. So it's like a very heartwarming story, but I think the thing that really makes it so memorable in my childhood experience is the fact that the music for this movie is incredible. There were 3 songs, and of the 3 songs, 2 of the 3 songs are still popular to this day. So like these 2, like the music as compared to like other Chinese older animated movies, it's not like Peking opera. It's not the Dong Dong Xiang basically. It is very nice pop music. So it's kind of, to me, it's okay. I know this is like a very blasphemous comparison. It's kind of like Disney music, where like here's the thing, you have to admit Disney movies are only this good because of the music. You have to admit that. Like, without the music, Disney movies like lose half of its charm. That's why people are so upset at the live action remakes when there were no music. So like, I personally think that the music really added a lot to Bao Lian Teng, and overall, I think it's just like an incredible movie that I always go back to rewatch and like cry every time because the song is so sad. Yeah, like.
But is that the 千万里我追寻着你?
No.
It's not this one. Okay. I remember someone sang this song.
It's 爱就一个字 and 想你的365天.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's so sad. Okay, so like the song that I'm talking about is 想你的365天, which is missing you for 365 days. And then the song literally goes like describes the 4 seasons, and then it's like, oh, another year has passed without you, and I've been missing you this entire time. And then it's like it's super sad. Like the last line is like I will remember your embrace, I will remember the different things that you have done, and in my dreams you are on the way home. It's so sad, but it's such a good song. Yeah, okay, anyway, so
Wow, that's sad, yeah.
I really highly recommend this movie if you can. It's on YouTube. A lot of these things that we talk about are in high definition on YouTube for free.
Hopefully got English sub.
There's no English sub, I know. But like, if you know Chinese, really go and watch them and be amazed by like the wonders of Chinese animation. Okay, moving on to newer works. So we've kind of lumped movies and TV shows together, but these are like, I would say, the most recent Chinese animated works that have been very relevant in the Chinese pop culture sphere. So before we begin, we have to acknowledge that other than Shanghai Meiying Chang, who has produced like majority of the things that we previously talked about, there have been newer like studios that economic powerhouses that have been responsible for a lot of the more popular works these days. So the 2 of the most famous ones are Bilibili, which is like B-站or China's YouTube. And also Tencent or Tengxun. So these 2 have been making a lot of the things that we are going to mention. So the first movie that really put Chinese animation back on the map in recent years is 大圣归来 or Return of the Monkey King in 2015. I have to say that this is not an amazing movie, but this was the best Chinese animated movie in the past like 2 to 3 decades. So when it came out in the cinemas, it actually broke box office records for animated movies in China. And people were just so excited because they were looking for something that was made in China in terms of animated movies. And this brought back all the memories from 大闹天宫 to 哪吒闹海, like all the stylistic choices were there. Yeah, of those things like that kind of reminded them of their childhood and reminded them of the golden and silver age of Chinese animation. So as Accented Cinema, a very famous YouTuber and film essayist puts it, the familiar Chinese music, the ribbons and the exaggerated proportion of gods, the stylized clouds and mountains is also familiar. But now the action is like anime. After 20 years of soul searching, my generation finally grew up. So I think it's a very good updated way of seeing like Chinese animation kind of grow up into something that is so much better than what we are used to for the past 20-30 years.
Yeah, and I think like specific to like Sun Wukong and COC, this franchise, right? I mean, I wouldn't call it a franchise, rather this specific literary work has just like connected generations, like not across like different like donghua projects over like various decades. Yeah, and just now we mentioned that actually the director for the 1999 version of COC directed 大圣归来 in 2015. He's called Tian Xiaopeng, and just a slight promo for him, he's gonna direct 三体 soon.
Oh!
Yeah! So, yeah, basically he really rose to fame because of 大圣归来. Yeah, and then like he was entrusted with one of the more well-known IPs in China recently, and it's related to like, it's more tech related. Yeah. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say that every generation of Sun Wukong's portrayal is slightly different and is very embedded in the aesthetic and the social commentary of that time.
Yeah.
So, if you are interested, right, please watch everything according to the timeline. I think it'll be a very cool experience, honestly. Yeah. Like we grew up with it also, and it's so nice to know that like what you to grow up with like these kinds of works and to see it evolve. Yeah.
So moving on to another very famous recent animated movie. I think this one might be more familiar to a lot of you. It's 大鱼海棠 or Big Fish and Begonia. It came out in 2016. So this is the film that a lot of people call the dawn of the Chinese animation industry. It is heavily inspired by Studio Ghibli's like animation and designs, but based on the cultural text of like the classics of Mountains and Seas, which is 山海经. So there's a lot of like vast sweeping designs and backdrops that show the fine line between nature and supernatural. And the thing is, again, this is not, in my personal opinion, a groundbreaking in like amazing movie in terms of quality, but it is groundbreaking and amazing for the Chinese market because it's been literal decades since there has been a commercial animated movie this good. And like it really kind of made people realize, oh my god, Chinese animation is actually good. Because it's been so many years that like they haven't seen any good Chinese animation. Like all the shows that we talked about, yes, they were like, you know, they left imprints on us as children, but they are very much catered towards kids. And like TV shows, there hasn't been like a giant blockbuster film that kind of attracted adults to the cinemas as well in literal decades.
And in addition, it was very limited to the Chinese speaking sphere, but I feel like Big Fish and Begonia really just went international.
Yes.
Yeah, and okay, let me talk about the Chinese elements. So like just now Jingnan mentioned 山海经. So the key character in this show is basically a gigantic fish, and it's called Kun. Yeah, and
like, Kun is supposed to be a mythical creature, so it's not supposed to like it's supposed to be loosely based on whales and like actual actual realistic animals. But the thing is, it is supposed to be a mythical creature, and the movie opens with the very famous line, which is like
北冥有鱼取之为鲲 or something. I remember that line. And oh my god, the aesthetic really struck me. Like I think I cried the entire show. It was like, I think I cried because out of like aesthetic appreciation. It was like, oh my god, it's so beautiful, and I'm so proud of the Chinese animators who created this. And like the main characters, they actually live within the Tulo structure, which is one of the most famous architectural structures in China. It's actually based in the Fujian province, specifically the Hakka people. So they built their houses in like cylindrical shapes or like square shapes. Yeah. So every family stays in one long strip, like vertically, but they like all the neighbors like live together like this. Yeah, and like I mean, you can think about it like the spatial configuration really like promotes like neighborly relations, and like it's like a whole big family lah, and it's like
it's an architectural wonder.
Yeah, and it's like just seeing these kinds of things being represented in a super beautiful animation style, and like later on to a catastrophic level. It's so beautiful. And also Zhou Shen, I think
Yes,
the song is also called 大鱼海棠. I cry every time I hear the song. Like recently I really needed to cry, but I was emotionally constipated. So my friend played the song in my face, and I just so there's this really famous singer called Zhou Shen. We mentioned him so many times in our previous episodes because we love him. And he got famous because of this song. Yeah, because his voice really he's a male singer, but his voice really can go into like the female vocal range. And he has a very airy,
angelic voice.
Yeah, and it's just, oh my gosh, just beautiful. The harmonies and everything.
So this show, really, like this movie really got very famous and popular and mainstream because of the music, because of the cultural references and a bunch of other things. So yeah, like personally, this was not my favorite movie because I think the plot doesn't really make a lot of sense. And there were points that I was very agonized.
I feel like this is one of those movies where you enjoy the aesthetic, then you don't really think about the plot.
Like, okay, I will give it that it is like a milestone for Chinese animation. And I think that it is a cultural reset, not gonna lie. But the thing is, I'm still critical about it because the next two movies on this list are like literally stole my heart and broke it into a million pieces. And then, so we will now move on to the two defining movies that I think are the peak of Chinese animation in recent years and have yet to be surpassed.
They both happened in 2019.
Yes. So the first one is 哪吒之魔童降世. Again, this is like the fourth or fifth time you heard the word 哪吒, but
we should do like a timeline for them. We should compile for them.
All the 哪吒. Yeah. But yeah, so like this is another retelling of 哪吒story, the kid who killed himself.
Wait. The kid who was born after a 3-year gestation period and has superpowers and
then killed himself. Okay, yeah. So like this is again a retelling of that, but a very different spin on it.
Yes.
So the director actually kind of changed several significant plot points to the so the original story was哪吒fighting the patriarchy, which is very relevant if you're living in like ancient China. Not that China is
or like
no longer
1960s.
Yeah, not that China is no longer patriarchal, but the story has been updated to reflect current social issues.
Yes.
So哪吒is now a social outcast whose only friend is the character that he murders in the original text. Remember, he murders the Dragon King's son and actually like literally pulls out his spine and plays with it like a rubber band. But we will not talk about that.
You literally talked about it? Oh my god!
Okay, so in this version, in this newest movie, his only friend is the friend that is Ao Ping.
Yeah.
So in this version, they are both children of circumstance whose families dictate that they must be enemies.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, this inherently makes the story about fighting destiny instead of fighting the patriarchy.
And the tagline is 我命由我不由天.
Yeah. So it's like very in Chinese called 热血. It's like very
hot-blooded.
Basically. So instead of pursuing a rocky path to filial piety,哪吒questions filial piety altogether. This hits home for a generation of millennials in China, a generation of young people who have been traveling internationally more than any time in history and whose parents are worried because they are no longer conforming to the social norms like marrying early, having multiple children so that they can have grandchildren and stuff like that, and things that choices young people are making are shattering their expectations of what a good filial piety child should be. And so all of these things have made it so that younger people are very disconnected from their parents' generation, which makes them question is being yu xiao, in Mandarin is yu xiao, which is like dumbly filial. Like you are filial to the point where you obey every single thing your parents say, even if it's against your own wishes or the best interest of everyone involved. So it kind of questions all of these things, and the social norms have already been set into a motion of change. So the movie actually accurately reflects the current concerns and social issues that younger people face in this generation. Not to mention, there's also a lot of social commentary on things like 留守儿童. So in the newest movie,哪吒actually doesn't get to spend a lot of time with his parents because his parents are trying to
workaholics.
Yeah, something like that. And then this also reflects another social problem in China where a lot of the parents are leaving their children behind in the rural areas in order to earn a living in the
bustling cities.
So they literally only see their kid once or twice a year, and the rest of the time the children spend with their grandparents. So it also like discusses the impact of that, and it's just a very fresh take on a very old story.
Yeah, and another aspect of the 留守儿童 was that because basically, Ne Zha was left to fend for himself in his social circle, right? And because he was a 怪胎, he was a weirdo. So
social outcast.
Yeah. So like, basically there was a lot of bullying involved, and at the end of the day, he's expected to protect the people who bullied him. So like, there was a lot of like internal conflict in that sense also.
Yeah. But it was really a very good. So like the plot was amazing. The animation, absolutely incredible.
Oh my god.
Wonderful. 10 out of 10. 75 million. Like wonderful. It's so good. Like oh my god. Like there was an opening sequence where Ne Zha has to like 拜师, so he actually has to seek a master to kind of help him with his powers, and it's just like a fever dream of animation where they are like tossed into this world
like 桃园盛世.
World of whimsy and wonder, and there's like you're just hit with so many colors and so many different things.
It's like sensory overload, but in a nice way.
It's really very nice. Like if you want to genuinely enjoy a good movie that excels in all aspects in terms of storytelling, characterization, the plot making actual sense, characters actually having good motivations, and
genuine friendship that you can relate with. Oh my god!
Actual good social commentary, wonderful animation, super clear, super sharp, super smooth, and not to like, and all of this rolled into one, then you will really enjoy this movie. Not to mention that it makes you cry.
Yes,
I cried at the end of it. Like it's every time I watch the end of it, I cried.
And then when the music starts playing, then like there's a whirlpool of things happening in the sky. Then you're just like, well, and also they made a fun spin on his 师傅. So like Ne Zha's 师傅 is actually like a very like wise, normally like long thin beard looking man who's very serious. But in this version, right, he's this like uncle who speaks Sichuanese and riding a pig.
He's like super fat. Like okay, I know it's not nice to fat shame people, but like
it's not about fat shaming. Like it's just that he's just a very
when he walks, he jiggles.
Yeah. He's very cute, and he
speaks in the Sichuan dialect.
Yeah, which is also one of the funnier sounding dialects, which is known for comedic purposes lah. So yeah, it's like very fresh spin to the story.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like another cash grab reboot, but like a genuine story that the director wanted to tell and present to the audience, and it was very, very well received. So many people love the show. It broke box office records again, and there were a lot of cosplays.
Yes,
because people were shipping the
Oping
and Ne Zha.
No, you know Oping, because Ne Zha is Lian O, so Oping. Like Lotus.
I still think it's very funny that they rebirthed him out of Lotus Roots.
Wait, I have something. Okay, I'll talk about Lotus Roots later on when we mention Ne Zha again later on this episode.
So many Ne Zhas.
So many Ne Zhas.
Yeah, and then the next movie that we're going to talk about is also one that came out in 2019. Again, I would consider like the peak of Chinese animation.
Yes.
白蛇 or White Snake. So the full name in Chinese is 白蛇
缘起. So the fate, the beginning of the fate.
Yeah, so it's actually a prequel to a very famous Chinese mythology story
called 白蛇传.
白蛇传 or like the Tale of the White Snake. And the story again is like something that has been retold in multiple medias.
Many times. So many drama adaptations.
So many different adaptations. Yeah, but basically it's like 白蛇精,
a white snake who gains sentience after thousands of years.
So it's like, and then she falls in love with a commoner guy. And then like Shu Shen, like a studious normal guy.
Also, she has a green snake sister.
Yeah. So they're and then they fall in love, and of course the heavenly courts do not allow this.
But this one wasn't really about the heavenly.
It was this one particular monk. It was this one particular monk that really could not stand the two of them.
He just kept cock blocking them lah. Basically, I think he very lonely, so he upset. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't say this. But
so basically it's like you must be punished and banished for falling in love with like someone who is not
like 人妖殊途 basically, like humans.
人鬼殊途, 人妖殊途, 人仙殊途, everything that is not your species you should not fuck.
Not your league, you cannot. No, but so the story was that Fa Hai trapped what's
the original story is
Fahai trapped Baisha within the tower, and then Xu Xian is just like a sad old person, a sad man who cannot do anything.
我叫你的名字，你敢不敢应？I don't remember the plot of it. But anyway, so okay,
that's the original story.
That's the original story, but the animated movie actually makes a prequel. So it's like
which is how the fate began between
how
the two of
them met
Yes.
and actually fell in love in their past life.
Yes.
And then they reincarnated, and then their reincarnation is supposedly the familiar tale that everyone knows.
Yes.
So this is their past life, and it's very, very beautiful.
Yes.
Because the animation is again leagues above what we are used to in terms of Chinese animated works. It's 3D animated, and then the second thing is like the backdrops actually resemble a lot of like Chinese ink paintings.
Yes.
And secondly, references a lot of real Chinese places. So there were scenes where they were on the river, and the backdrop is like these mountainous areas, and these mountainous areas are real places that you can visit in China, and they just genuinely look so like godlike, you know, like misty and wonderful and mysterious.
I think one point to note is the original tale is set within Hangzhou, which is one of the well-known, very beautiful places in China. So they have a lot of beautiful waters like Xiaoqiao, Liu Shui, so very well like sculpted nature places like waters and bridges and like little pavilions and all that. So they recreated this kind of imagery also in the cartoon, in donghua.
Yeah, and again, like the plot actually makes a lot of sense and tells a story that is very fresh and relevant, which is making your own decisions and making your own choices in the face of quote unquote fate or destiny, and like, you know, the power of an individual versus the power of, you know, like the gods
or like the social expectations.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I like about this retelling is in the original show, right, Xu Xian is just this like very passive man who doesn't look like he loves Baisha, right? But the moment he realizes Baisha is a snake, he like, oh shit man, what did I get into? I didn't sign up for this, like a bit like that. But then in the donghua adaptation, right, he was a very active person. There was a lot of character development. He really tried his best to be on par with like the kinds of difficulties they have to face, and he made a lot of sacrifices himself. And yeah, you feel like they really deserve each other lah. So
yeah, it's a very like moving story, as well as the fact that the music is wonderful.
Like Zhou Shen.
Yeah, Zhou Shen also sings like, okay, Zhou Shen basically
he's the 古风专业户.
Yeah, he sings a lot of songs to these animated movies.
Yeah.
So he also sang the song for this particular movie, and I think it's like also a very, very good and moving song.
Yeah.
I think the lyrics is very well written as well. So you can easily find there's an English dubbed version of this movie.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the full movie is on YouTube, but you can watch the trailer. Like, I really think that of all the different movies,哪吒之魔童降世 and 白蛇 are the two 白蛇 缘起 are the two that you should really check out if you've never watched any Chinese animated films.
And after you watch 白蛇缘起, there's a sequel called 青蛇劫起.
Yeah, so I haven't watched it actually.
Oh shit, then should I okay,
don't spoil it.
I'm not gonna talk about the plot. I'm gonna talk about the aesthetic and the setting.
Oh, it's very cool.
Yeah. So, okay, so you know, just now with 白蛇缘起 is first life, and then the original story, second life. 青蛇劫起 is a bit like their third life.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it ended off with, you know, them being separated and everything, right? But the storyline starts off with 青蛇, the sister. Yeah, and so it actually showcases, okay, she's actually normally a side character in retellings and you don't really see things from her perspective, but now this puts her as the center character and it showcases the love, the sisterly love they have for each other. And then there's this mega plot twist that makes you like, holy shit. But yeah, I will not talk about the plot twist, you better watch it. So, and the context is like, she basically gets thrown into an alternate universe that looks like a very rundown but modern urban city. It's like a modern urban city in decay. Yeah, and like, if you really like girl crush concepts, right? This girl, she can fight, she can ride motorbikes, and she's cool as hell. So yeah, and they actually used Chinese counting system, the like 子时午时 and all that. So these numerical systems tie in with the plot line. So the different the different times of the day comes with different 节. And 渡节 is a concept that animals or
it's in Taoism.
Yeah, it's like animal spirits who gain sentience. They also like, they have to 渡节 also.
They have to overcome certain challenges and hardships in order for them to
prove that they are worthy of being human. Yeah. So, and yeah, once again, it's a visual spectacle, but this time it's not just a visual spectacle in the like 古风 watercolor aesthetic. It's also a visual spectacle in the way they mesh this with like super hard, grungy, dystopian aesthetic. And it's just super cool. And the one character that I really love, you know the Huli who like mends the shop? Yes. Oh my god, she's like...
Again, very popular choice for Chinese cosplayers.
Yeah, because okay, she's low-key sexy, but she's like the sexy cheeky...
Low-key sexy? That girl is... I mean like so sexual you can see all of her chest.
No, oh really? Sorry, I don't remember her chest. No, she's like sexy, cheeky, smart, sly, like every single like characterization for Hu Li Jing, it just goes into one. And her voice acting is so good. Wow.
Her skirt is death-defyingly short.
I cannot remember how she looks like. I remember this now.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Oh, she's wearing nothing lah.
She's basically wearing lingerie.
She's wearing nothing.
She's essentially wearing lingerie.
Yeah.
Not that I have a problem with that. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Send her your cosplays. Okay. So yeah, so that's 白蛇缘起 and 青蛇劫起. I hope they have another film coming up soon because they did have a little snippet at the end. So I'm hoping for that. But yeah, and then there's also 灵气, which is more like, okay, the style really feels like anime. It's like very anime animation style, and it's like a animation series rather than the movies that we mentioned previously. And it's super famous, and it plays on the, if you watch our BL episode, the trope of the ship being one black hair person and one white hair person. And 灵气 literally means spirit packed. So this show, it combines the urban setting with some characters in Hanfu and having to form pacts with each other. So like now we are like, our lives are tied together. So like that creates the premise for like the entire ship lah. And right now the manhwa is on episode 575, and it's actually so famous that even if you watch like anime websites, right, they list this as one of the anime to watch. So I think this is a good, what's the word for it? This is a
good example.
No, this is an example of like, you know, when a Chinese animation series makes it and just ends up on like a Japanese streaming website. Yeah.
Talking about other shows that made it internationally, we have to talk about like the other BL adjacent or straight up BL animation works.
Yes.
So definitely 魔道祖师 or the founder of Diabolism, which came out in 2018. This has, I think, 3 or 4 seasons. It's concluded. I think season 1 is the best. As someone who watched all of it, I think season 1 is phenomenal.
Is it because it's the most tragic?
Yes. Oh no, but I think because they played it out the most, like the rest of the seasons are quite short, like shorter.
True.
So, if you like 墨香铜臭 or you like 魔道祖师 or The Untamed, I strongly recommend you watch this. I think it's very good. In fact, I think it was better than the drama.
Definitely. I think this this follows the book slightly closer than the drama.
And so this actually managed to run its course. So like all 4 seasons. So it actually finished. Whereas 天官赐福 or Heaven Official's Blessing is the other 墨香铜臭 adaptation. Only has 1 season. It's very sad because like the 2nd season was supposed to come out in 2021, but as we all know, it's already 2023.
Check out an episode on BL to understand why.
So I personally think that 天官赐福 was not as well done as 魔道祖师. They are by different studios. And but I mean, if you like BL and you like these 2 works already, you can go check them out. But yeah, I would say my favorite recommendation of the newer animated works in terms of series is actually neither of this, but this very new show that I watched called Link Click. I hate the English name. Why is it Link Click? It makes no sense. It should
be like Time Skip or something.
It's just call it Agents of Time, which is the direct translation from its Chinese name, 时光代理人. So basically, the premise is that these 2 young boys, like one black hair, one white hair. Again.
Oh my!
They are in their teens, like late teens. So the 2 of them, one of when working together in collaboration, can travel back in time in photographs to kind of know information, change events and stuff like that. So they are agents of time. They help service their clients who will bring in photos to and ask for a certain request. And then from each client's request, there will be a story that unfolds that kind of follows a central line that is a mystery that's trying to be resolved. So this show, no exaggeration, made me cry so hard in the middle of the night that my mom heard me from the other room and opened the door to check on me because she heard me sobbing.
Oh my god!
I'm not gonna spoil why I cried so hard because it really was a very devastating plot twist. But it tells the story so vividly and in an extremely touching manner that tugs your heartstrings. Instead of tugging it, it rips your heartstrings out, stomps on it, sets it ablaze, and it shoves it back into your chest. So, but at the same time, the music is incredible, the animation is wonderful. It is a lot, the artistic style is a lot closer to anime, or actually Korean manhwa. Yeah, because the character designs were done by a Korean artist.
I see.
But it is incredibly beautiful to watch, and I think the plot is amazing. It's again so famous that people have recommended it on anime websites and stuff like that. So I really think it is worth a watch.
Very nice. I feel like I have mixed feelings about like Chinese donghua being recommended on anime websites because people may think that Japanese anime.
Yeah, especially if you don't understand the language and people are like, all East Asian languages sound the same, or all non-English languages.
And there is already a kind of like East Asian blindness or confusion, right? Like people they cannot tell Japan, Korean, and Chinese culture, food, everything apart.
Yeah,
so
I don't fully blame them, but it's like it can be confusing at times.
Like on one hand, thank you for putting us on the honor roll, but on the other hand, can credit properly. So just now we mentioned that there were a lot of donghua that were inspired by Chinese mythical legends and stuff like that. So there are two more. So 百妖谱 2020 and 飞人仔 2018. So okay, I'll talk about 飞人仔 first. So it's basically it combines a lot of mythical creatures and brings them into a modern day urban city setting. So they just have like very chill life together. So for example, Yang Jian, 二郎神, right? He's actually supposed to be like a very stoic and very stern person. But in this show, right, they really played up his relationship with his dog. So like 小甜犬. Yeah, so basically right, in this show, right, 二郎神 is obsessed with fluffy creatures. And every time he sees his dog, he wants to like pet. So like every time he sees any of the other mythical creatures who actually have fur or fluff, right, he'll be like, oh my god, 我爱毛茸茸. Then he will just melt. Yeah, so like normally a very stoic and very cool looking guy, the moment he sees fluffy stuff, he will melt. So like they basically found like very funny comedic points for all of these mythical creatures, and they also found ways in which these mythical creatures can or cannot fit into urban city life. So like let's say like some of them, let's say I cannot remember specifically, but basically I think the Kirin, he was like a workaholic, and then he keeps like working overtime, and then like because he works too much, his hair will grow too much. It's like a lot of this kind of stupid stuff, and they also break the fourth wall a lot because the person who draws this entire comic series that turns into a donghua, he appears in the show also, and then he interacts with the characters. So the art style is actually, I wouldn't say it's like super, what's the word for it? It's not like super aesthetic,
it's chibi
style. It's chibi style, and it's super funny, and they actually add little like nuggets of information you can learn from Shanghai Jing. So like every episode you learn about, so this particular mythical creature, it has this certain quirk. And then you can remember it very well because you can relate to the urban life setting. So oh my god, I really love this show. Okay, also Nerja appears again.
Nerja is everywhere. Oh my god.
Nerja is everywhere, and his parents always change. So his parents are either Niu Wang and Tianshan Gongzhu, or it's Li Jing and the unnamed mom, sadly, or he just has no parents.
It's kind of like Greek mythology where there isn't a very consistent.
But Zeus is everybody's dad, right? Because
can't keep it in his pants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then 百妖谱 is more like I feel like the animation style is a bit like 大鱼海棠. Like in fact, the color grading is very like reddish, also reddish sunsetish color. And I haven't watched the entire show yet, so I cannot tell you the specific what's the word for it? How I feel about the character development and everything. But the aesthetic is very nice, and once again, it is inspired by mythical creature related literary texts like 山海经 and 聊斋志异. So I really like, firstly I really am interested in like how people can adapt some people consider it like backward or even like a disconnect from our modern everyday life. But I really love how people can adapt all these things creatively and fit it into a context where like we as people who have never lived in a village before or have never lived in a time where these kinds of creatures are like very deeply embedded in the way we like superstitions and all that. Like audiences and us can relate to it also. So yeah, check them out if you want like a chill time. Here's what I would say.
The last animated series that we are going to discuss is 中国奇谭. This is the most recent one that came out in 2023, and it has created a lot of buzz in China, both online and offline, because when it first opened and like premiered on television, it got a 豆瓣 rating, which is kind of like IMDb/Rotten Tomatoes. It had a 豆瓣 rating of 9.4 out of 10, which is incredibly high.
Yeah.
And honestly, the first episode deserved that rating. I think it's about 8+ now, so it's kind of split over the showing of the different episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, but essentially it is again a modern take on Asian Chinese folklore and mythologies, as suggested by the name 中国奇谭. So it's like ancient, not say ancient, it's the name itself suggests like different weird wacky stories in Chinese history, which is like supernatural,
mythical creatures
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it has 8 episodes that I binge watched last night. Each episode is about 20 minutes or sometimes between 13 to 15 minutes. Again, all available on YouTube with English subtitles. And I would say that the English subtitles are not the best and a little bit problematic at times, but like negligible, so like you still can enjoy the
aesthetic is insane.
Yeah, you can still enjoy the product without worrying too much about missing out some of the content.
Yeah.
But I would really recommend the first episode, the second episode, and that's about it. No, okay.
Wait, is one of them the little 小山妖?
It's the first episode.
Oh, I watched that one.
Yeah. So it tells basically a different perspective on different individual stories. It even has like elements of space or like astral travel and stuff like that. I get the reason why I think it's so highly rated is because it is very much a modern take on animation as well as Chinese folklore and mythology. And it leaves a lot to the imagination and a lot of space for interpretation. So like, not to mention that the quality of the animation is honestly wonderful and amazing.
Yeah.
So if you want to check it out, I really highly recommend the first and second episodes. The second episode is a little bit scary, not going to lie.
It's the
it's
Oh, okay.
And
I watched that one also.
Literally could not, like, first of all, I just can't sleep in general, but it didn't help that I kept having the visuals and imagery of the episode like
and the thing is, it's not even gory, it's just like low-key sinister, and like there's a lot of dark storyline, undercurrent.
It's a bit gothic, like so like
but it's not like jump scare or like blood or whatever.
I would say it's not jump scare, but it's close. Like it creates the atmosphere of suspense.
I think once again it's like how the 意象 style, it really gives you the vibes.
And again, it's been very popular in terms of people cosplaying the characters.
Yes, I wanted to talk about it. So like especially the second episode, so like the way they draw the characters is very like mask-like, right? So a lot of people have been doing like makeup cosplay, and they will add it to this TikTok song, like the sped up jazz version of it. Have you heard it?
No.
It's I don't know, it's like it just creates a really insane vibe, and like people actually will comment under it and say, what is this inspired by? And that's how it starts conversations going.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
People have done like story analysis of these episodes also.
Yeah, some of the interpretations are kind of wild. Like they range from like, oh, this is about love and possessiveness to like, this is about the capitalist society we live in and the CCP being oppressive. Like, genuinely, that's the YouTube commentary I saw, and I was like, oh my god.
I only saw until the love and desire part.
Yeah. No, I was like, okay. They were like literally like, you can't see this inside the Chinese firewall. Watch this now before it gets taken down.
Oh my
god. I got a real conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah, okay, but that's the beauty of artworks like this. Like you can interpret it however you want, and like if people agree with it, they can discuss more, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so apart from that, there are actually a lot more donghua series adaptations, and some of them were actually so famous that there are live adaptations versions of them. So one of them is 苍兰诀, which is a drama that swept 2022 that Jingnan was really raving about to me.
It's not raving, like it's not bad. Okay, I'm just gonna put it. It's the one one with called the love between the demon and the devil and fairy.
Yeah, but what is this translation? I cannot. When
they tried.
Every time they translate a Wu Feng title, it just becomes so weird. Okay, but yeah, that's one of them. Another one is Tong Ling Fei, and I thought that one was very interesting because, okay, Tong Ling Fei, right? The premise is, okay, it's set within the ancient past once again, but this time it's like the main character, she basically has to marry a general or a king or something, but he gives no shit about that, and he has a lot of like modern woman sensibilities, and in addition she can talk to spirits, and she uses it to like fight patriarchy basically, and it's like just, and she uses it to, there's also a lot of female jealousy from like I would say like not very well written female characters, you know, they're just like jealous because she gets more screen time, or not so screen time, she gets more alone time with the king and stuff like that. So like she's basically using her connection with her spirits to fight these people also. And what I thought was very, very interesting was there's actually a live adaptation version of it, but it's very comedic. So like it's actually one of those 网剧 that's shot in vertical format. Yeah, it's not like that. It's like that.
It's like a short form drama series with each episode ranging between 30 seconds to 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's like, this is a very interesting kind of format, but yeah, Tong Ling Fei was very interesting to watch. And then there's also two adaptations, one called 偷偷藏不住 and one called 南红, and these are more like coming of age love stories, and it's written by the same author, and the characters actually know each other between the two series. And I think 偷偷藏不住 has a live action adaptation recently with Zhao Lusi and a male actor, I don't know. But the art style is super dreamy and beautiful, and I think the live action cannot live up to that. So just watch the donghua, please. Yeah, and then the last one, which is very famous in China, it's called 斗罗大陆, and I would say this is an epitome of the entire ACG subculture coming together. So 斗罗大陆actually it's simultaneously a 漫画, a 动画, a live action, and also a game. And this entire franchise ranges multiple generations. Like the main character's own grandfather is also mentioned quite a lot in the entire series, and then the main character's children's children also like form future generations of what do you call it, the 十来个奇怪, which are the main 7 kids who with like a lot of plot armor lah, basically. And like this 斗罗大陆 builds an entire world that combines like heaven. I wouldn't really say heaven, but if you reach a certain level of mastery, you can actually enter like the 天界, and you became like XYZ Shen. So there's a lot of different premises and a lot of different level up systems, because after all it's like also a game, right? So this entire franchise is just like humongous, and they actually have 3D donghua, and the art is like stunningly beautiful.
For 3D.
Yeah, like Jingnan has a rant about 3D donghua, but this one is like, wow, the art, the hair physics and everything. Wow, it's like, damn, and yeah, it's once again, there's a lot about like the story of like sacrifice, or like hierarchical structures, and like people who have to fulfill a destiny they don't really want to fulfill. So there's a lot of different things, and of course comedic relief. Like one of the main characters, right, his power is to conjure sausages that will level up your tears. Yeah, but later on he undergoes character development and becomes very cool. So yeah, and the thing is, right, you can find a lot of like fan-made cuts of the comedic moments and the very shippable moments, because like there are actually like 官配 lah, like most of the characters have like their couples within the show, but actually the show is super tragic near the end. So yeah, if you want to have a happy life, just don't watch the ending part of it. Yeah. And then there are also very high production 古风耽美 style. This includes both BL and BG, which is just like a boy-girl relationship style. And one of them I really love is 不小心救了江湖公敌. Like, oh my god, it's like, firstly the art style is beautiful, and it also once again it kind of draws inspiration from the traditional Chinese watercolor painting style. And there's also like 卷轴. So let's say a new character is introduced, right? And then like they have like their own specific 背景, and wow, it's like you can literally see the brushstrokes being applied in some of the scenes, and wow, I don't know, I was so shocked, because this is probably like the most beautifully drawn BL donghua I've ever watched, even above 魔道祖师. Yeah, so
魔道祖师 was not that beautiful. What's backdrops were great. The characters drawing were not that great.
But like the fluidity of like the motions was very nice. Yeah. But this one is like the art style is very. Would you call it airbrushed? I'm not sure, but like it's very stylistic and super beautiful. And then there's also Aha, which also it is what do you call it? It's also a BL, and the art style is also very beautiful. Like this is Danmei art style, and I really respect the production team because before every episode they put this disclaimer. Each episode will come out very slowly because we want to make sure that we only produce the highest quality of artwork, which is something that you don't hear a lot nowadays, given all the capitalist commentary that we've been giving about production nowadays, right? So I really respect them for putting this out there and making sure that they want to produce the best quality stuff. Okay, the last one I will recommend within the Gufeng Danmei high production quality style is 我在后宫当剧剧, and until now I don't know why she's called 剧剧, but this is about a girl who enters the palace as a concubine, but she doesn't want to be a concubine, so she cross dresses and she's very good at drawing. Yeah, so this is an art within art kind of what do you call it? An art within art kind of donghua. So firstly, the donghua itself is animated very beautifully, and secondly, the main character can draw, but she purposely draws the male lead very uglily so that she can like have less attention from him. So like there are like super funny like meme arts within the donghua itself. Okay, the last one that I will recommend is called 10万个冷笑话. And this one, once again, has Nerja in it. Okay, so this came out in 2014, and I think this is one of the highlights of my secondary school life in terms of like media consumption. So it starts off with a retelling of Nerja, but it's hilarious. So okay, first off, right, you know that the gestation period for Nerja was 3 years, right? When his mom finally gives birth to Nerja, it came out as a big meatball.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's canon.
Yeah, and then the thing is when Nerja's dad
tried to kill it with a sword.
Yeah, but okay, in this show there wasn't a lot of like killer intent lah. So like Nerja's dad was actually a very nice uncle. So he just sliced open with a sword, right? Out came a Jingang Barbie. So like Nerja is supposed to be like a cute looking, like you can't really, it's like a gender neutral looking small boy. He's supposed to be born like that. But this one, right, he came out with a super small boy head, and then when the rest of his body came out, he was like a humongous Hulk.
Bodybuilder vibes.
Yeah, it was so funny, but his voice was like that. Then he was like, 哎呀，人家不要啦. He was saying this kind of stuff, and it's just hilarious because like he's basically super strong. So every time he feels very shy or awkward, right, he will slap someone else, then the person would just like spin out of the room because Nerja is so strong. And I feel like this entire production team, right, they 脑洞很大. 脑洞 means like the hole in their head 很大, which is a web slang for like if someone creates like
very
really
creative
ideas, and like they can combine things together. So just now we mentioned how in the original tale Nerja killed himself and then he was reborn out of lotus, right?
Roots.
So in this one, right, when he was reborn out of lotus roots, the lotus roots didn't get connected properly, so his limb like was like, because otah and 四连, right, when you cut lotus it has like the little bits of fiber. So yeah, they just made so many jokes, and Nerja isn't even like the only character in this show. Like there was like Snow White, Pinocchio, like it really went like hashtag Mr. Worldwide. This entire franchise just has so many things, and they just somehow managed to connect all these fairy tales across different parts of the world together to create a megaverse of like weird ass shit that's happening. And because it's not just it doesn't just cater to the Chinese audience, right? So I remember there was this alien character they created, and he's called the New Blash King, and he comes from the New Blash planet. Then I was like, what the hell is New Blash? Like NEWBLASH. It's 鸟不拉屎星球. Because it's 鸟不拉屎 means like a place that's so far, so ulu, so far away that even birds wouldn't poop there. Yeah, it's like the humor is just, oh my god, it's peak level. It's like, I think it's unhinged the way I am, so like, I can connect to it very well. So yeah, 10万个冷笑话 is something that you can watch like anytime, anywhere, but preferably not when you're eating. Just please check it out. It's all over YouTube. Yeah.
So with all the recommendations out of the way, we'll end with some concluding thoughts. The biggest thought or like rant that I have about animated works as a very big fan is that I really hate the misconception or the wrong impression that people have that animated works are just cartoons meant for kids. That pisses me off to my core. The part of the reason why I'm so angry is because in the show that we recommended, which is 中国奇谭, like I mentioned, the second episode actually has quite some scenes that are where the art style is a little bit scary. So there were parents complaining online that this show is so bad because it's not good for kids, because like it's so scary. My kid was crying by watching the episode. So why are you making things that are not meant for children? And everyone online immediately collectively lost their minds because they're like, this is the highest quality animated work we've had in literal decades. If it gets pulled down because some stupid parent complained that it's not meant for children, I will literally murder them. Not kidding, but like it's so frustrating and agonizing because a lot of people who are animators or professionals in the industry also say that part of the reason why the industry has suffered so much throughout the years is because Chinese audiences don't take animation seriously. They think it's just cartoon meant for kids, and they don't see the pride and joy that creating animation is genuinely creating a form of art. And that it can carry so much meaning and express so many things that are only available in this medium, because there is something about like animation that transcends reality, because you can literally create anything that your imagination can come up with, that you're not limited by the budget, you're not limited by physics, you're not limited by, you know, having real life actors and stuff like that. So animation is truly a very unique and one of a kind form of art. So I really get very angry and frustrated when people say, oh, it's just for kids, why do adults watch this? Especially when you consider the fact that a lot of anime or like animated works from other countries like America or Japan have a lot of shows that are catered towards adults. Like off the top of my head, Simpsons, Rick and Morty, BoJack Horseman.
Oh my god,
like,
Happy Tree Friends.
Happy Tree Friends.
Oh my god.
And like a long list of Japanese anime that are not child friendly but are incredibly pertinent and like relevant and good pieces of media.
Social commentaries.
So even social commentary. So like people really need to shake. I'm so sick and tired of the stupid impression that people have that cartoons are just for kids. If you watch cartoons as an adult, you're a loser. Like shut the fuck up. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well, I totally agree with what you said, and like I think this just really echoes what the godfather of, you know, Chinese animation, like that's his true thing, right? Which is like how animation should reflect social issues, social reality, and it's not just like something that like,
it's not just a flippant piece of entertainment.
Yeah, and it's
not Coco Melon. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, nothing against Coco Melon. I'm sure that a lot of children enjoy it.
Yeah, and, okay, but I also feel like looking back at the entire history of Chinese donghua, it really has come a long way. It started off with a very strong motive, and till now you can see with like 中国奇谭 and all the other amazing works that we mentioned, it has come a long way, and it has still stayed quite true to its roots, and it's innovating not just in the technicality of it, but also in the the content of it, like the storyline, and how it reflects how society is evolving and how we as the audience is growing along with it. So hopefully the parents also can grow up. and to understand that like this is an art form that I really feel like good animation transcends like age limits and like generations. And another thing I want to say is that like now that Chinese animations are gaining like international popularity. Like a lot of cosplayers in the past, let's say Chinese cosplayers, they only cosplay like Japanese anime characters, but now you can also see them all embracing like a very specific Chinese 古风 like 古典 art style or like makeup style in order to represent these characters in real life. And yeah, it's a bit like what we mentioned in the BL episode, like seeing something within your own culture being represented in the form of media and being able to interact with it with like, because you have a direct like relation with it and you grow up with it. And I just remember last time we used to watch cartoons or like donghua on 少儿频道, which was like in the back in our days, there was only like one channel from CCTV to watch from, and then there was also like 土豆网 Youku, but now there was Bilibili, which is like Chinese YouTube, right? Then you can see like everybody 发弹幕, like adding live commentary, and like suddenly everybody just has like the entire internet that consumes this can have inside jokes that they share with each other, and just things just circulate so fast. So once again, it's like this ecosystem, after going through like the golden age, the disappearance, the silver age, now it's like, you know, the renaissance, and hopefully it just goes up and up and up from there. And like for us, I think we're just very proud to be able to share all these things with y'all, and we hope that you can explore them and to appreciate this kind of like different kinds of aesthetic. Yeah.
We just genuinely feel like Chinese animation has come a very long way, and it's honestly genuinely good form of media and art that I think deserves a place in the anime. If you're a fan of animated works, deserves a place in your genre as well. So like, don't just watch Japanese anime or American movies. Maybe check out some of the movies and shows we recommended today. And with that, we've come to the end of this episode. Would you like to plug our socials?
Yeah, okay, so we have an Instagram at china.through.sglasses where we will upload our highlights and funny moments and you can interact with us.
You can also watch this podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. That's all for this week's episode, and next week's episode we will be talking about Chinese variety shows. See you, bye!